Hi, welcome to our first official week of PowerPoint presentations. And I'm going to start off with a introduction to human geography. And I'd like to start this off by asking, what is geography? Because all of you have taken this class with some idea in your head of what geography is all about. And there are many, many different types of definitions out there regarding what is geography. Every definition that you look up online will be different. Every definition that you read in every textbook will be different. And they'll range from a very broad definition, such as geography is the study of the earth, which really doesn't help you narrow down anything because it's so broad, to very lengthy definitions. Geography is the study of the earth and everything on it, human environment relations, the people, the places, the culture, the language, the politics, the weather, the trees, the plants, the animals, and it goes on and on and on and on, which isn't any better. And it is difficult to find a definition of geography that not only explains what it is, but separates it from every other discipline that also studies similar topics. There are other disciplines that study culture. There are other disciplines that study politics. There are other disciplines that study weather and climate. So what makes geography different? Well, that's the definition that I'm going to focus on. So the definition that I want you to know is not necessarily the one in your book, but it is one that I came across as a graduate student many, many years ago, and I find best suits separating, differentiating geography from other disciplines. And that is, geography is the study of spatial relations expressed as patterns and processes. The study of spatial relations expressed as patterns and processes. It is a spatial science, meaning we look at things in space through space. We look at patterns that occur in space, and then the process that is behind that pattern, or why did that pattern occur. So in essence, we are looking at why things are where they are. Most people, when they think of geography, think of just where things are. They think of it as Jeopardy geography. Where are the largest cities? Where are the longest rivers? Where are the highest mountains? What are all the capitals? These are all things that are important, that are starting points, background information, which is why map locations are part of your exams. You do need to have a base knowledge of where things are. But for the geographer, the more important aspect is why they are there. So, for example, if I asked you what is the capital of California, you would tell me Sacramento, right? Okay. Well, the next question is, well, so what? What does that tell us? You were able to memorize that fact that you learned a long time ago. What the geographer would be interested in is, first, yes, this is the capital. But if I asked you the question, why is Sacramento the capital of California? What would be your answer to that? You might be thinking, now that's a little more complicated. No, there's an answer. Of course, it's not a short one, but it's a variety of historical factors, locational factors, geographic factors, political factors, economic factors that kind of all came together to make that location the prime location for the state capital. So that's what geographers are interested in. What is the pattern, and why did it become that way, or how did it become that way, and what are the implications of that particular pattern? So what that means is that regardless of what you're interested in, And regardless of your major, because I know the vast majority of you taking this class are not geography majors, you can relate your major to geography in some way. If you are a criminology major, for instance, surely you can look at patterns of crime. You can look at patterns of crime in Fresno. If you were to map it out, there's going to be a pattern. It's not going to be random. So first you would create the pattern. Then the geographer would ask, why is that the pattern? What is the process behind that pattern? What is going on? Because just knowing the pattern is interesting, but you can't solve problems until you actually understand the process behind it. So think about your major and see if there's an aspect about your major that you can relate to geography in some way. If there's some component that you can map, for instance, then that is definitely a geographic component. Now, the main thing that separates human geography from other types of geography is what we're going to study. So there's essentially human geography and physical geography as the main categories. In physical geography, you'll learn more about the weather and landforms and alluvial systems and natural hazards and things of that sort. In human geography, we learn more about things that have to do with humans. So we're looking at politics and economy and agricultural systems and urban systems and language and culture, but we're looking at it from this perspective, okay? The pattern of it and the process. As I mentioned in the intro, I'm a medical geographer, and as a medical geographer, I map patterns of disease. I'm not looking at cells under a microscope. I'm not curing diseases. I'm looking at the patterns of disease. Why do certain diseases occur where they do? Why do you find certain diseases only occur in one part of the world and they do not occur in another part of the world? And how do they diffuse differently? Or how are they passed on from person to person differently in different places because of geographical factors, which could be the climate, which could be the topography, which could be cultural norms or behavioral patterns of that particular group of people. So that's what geography is looking at. It is not just, can you name the highest mountain and the longest river and the state capital? It is looking at broader patterns and the process behind that pattern. And that is why I love geography so much, because it can be applied to anything. You can study so many things as long as you are looking at it from that particular perspective, which is the spatial perspective. I'm just going to go over a few other examples of this visually. This is looking at world population. This is a dot map. A dot map is a map in which a dot represents a certain number of people. It's different from a choropleth map where you see categories. So in this particular map, one dot represents 100,000 people. Now, if you just glanced at this quickly and I asked you, is there a pattern? Sure, it's not random. We don't have a random distribution of people. We have a clear pattern where we see dense populations. And those dense populations tend to occur in areas where there's access to water, where there's access for trade, to ports, where there is access to industry, to jobs, where there is access to good soils. These are all of the things that play a role in where we're going to see dense population densities. We're not going to see dense population densities in areas that are covered by ice or in areas that are desert. We're going to see dense populations where there is access to something beneficial for that particular population, and that is very, very clear in the map, looking at the coastlines of the United States, looking at the density in Europe and in Japan and in China and in India, and there are also implications to that as well. This is looking at life expectancy. We can see this is a choropleth map where there's categories, and the times that these maps were taken is not as important. I just want you to be able to see the pattern. Okay, that's the important part of these examples. And we have life expectancies here that range from the 30s to the 80s. Is there a pattern? Most definitely, there's a pattern. And the pattern, again, not every single place is going to fit the pattern, but generally speaking, the pattern is those areas that are considered less developed have lower life expectancies than those areas that are considered developed. And not only is that a pattern, but there is an implication to that pattern. How different would places be if that pattern was different? If you knew, for instance, that you were likely to die by 40, would you be doing things differently now? Of course, you probably wouldn't be sitting there listening to me talk about geography right now. You would be on a whole different life course where everything would be pushed up. So people will do things earlier. Okay, marriage would occur earlier. Having children would occur earlier. Everything would occur earlier because the life expectancy is different. How would this affect the economy? How would this affect politics? You know, how old are the people that are in charge of things in the United States? Are they 17? No. You know, they're usually at the age that could be the life expectancy of other nations. So you can see how that can impact the development of a country, for instance. So not only do we need to understand the process, but we also need to understand the implication as well. And again, it doesn't have to be something like population or life expectancy. It can be something as simple as beer consumption. Like I said, if you can map it, it is geography. So if you just want to look at who's drinking beer, there's a pattern that you can see on the map. The geographer would be interested in why are there certain areas that have darker colors? Why are there certain areas that have lighter colors? Why are there certain areas that are light surrounded by other areas that are dark? And the geographer would establish the pattern and then ask questions. You know, what are the laws in that particular state? What are the demographics of that particular state? Does it have to do with age? Does it have to do with religion? What are the variables that are at play? Because your hypotheses may be correct or may not be correct. This one is looking at where McDonald's franchises are located. Again, it's not random. And you might say, well, the patterns, they're everywhere. And they are globally everywhere. But you can see that there's a pattern in the sense that there are certain areas where there are clearly more than other areas. So the geographer would want to know why that is occurring. Does it have to do just with the population, which would be the simple hypothesis? Well, those areas that are urban areas that have more people are going to have more McDonald's. And odds are that's going to hold true. But there might be places that person for person are equal, but they may still have more McDonald's for some reason. So maybe there's something about the demographic of that particular culture that they're more likely to purchase McDonald's than not. So there might be some other questions that you can ask. Geographers might also try to correlate different maps. Could there be a link? Could we overlay the map of a fast food franchise with beer consumption and see a link of some sort? Maybe yes, maybe not. A lot of geographers go into geographic information systems, or GIS, and that is what they do. They look at different maps and they create different layers of maps where, you know, can I overlay disease with the terrain, with the topography, with the highway network, and can I see a pattern between all those different variables? So that is essentially what geography is in its essence. No matter what the topic is, it's looking at it from that spatial perspective. What is the pattern that it forms, and what is the process, or what is going on to create that pattern? And that is the framework that we're going to use for the entire semester when we talk about different topics, whether it be language or politics or agriculture. We're going to look at it from that spatial perspective. So hopefully that gives you a better sense of what geography is all about. and we're going to move on to part 2.